Hey guys, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics. We are live today on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. What you can do is go to my Instagram and go to my DM and type the word Mansi, and you will see the link for the poster that we have posted for weeks or days. And then on top of that, there's a link for Clubhouse if you want to just hear us and not watch us. I prefer that you watch us because I put my makeup on, and so does she today. So, guys, today we have a comedian on the house at Back to Basics, and it is just amazing. Her name is Mansi Mehra, and I want to just applaud saying, Mansi, thanks for coming on my show today, and thank you again. How are you?
The pleasure is all mine. I am doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for coming on Back to Basics and trying to make my day special, especially on live on Back to Basics. So before we get to the basics of your comedy world and your stand-up comedian world and the modeling world that you are in, what does Back to Basic mean to you before we get into that?
That's a great question. I think everything end of the day goes back to basic. I feel like even if you learn so much and there's certain factors in your life that are like the basic necessity, whether it's your value system or all the values that you hold, those are like pretty much your niche, your basic. So even with this pandemic, I feel like that's something that's held people together, and whether it's your discipline, your integrity, your skills, which are the basic skills that you would need to have, honesty and things like that. So I always feel like even if you go and excel wherever you go, however far you go, end of the day you come back to basics.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mansi, because it seems like we tend to forget the basics of life, and we just need to just take a step back and say, you know what, let's take a deep breath and start fresh, or maybe start from something. And I think COVID actually taught us this, but I think it should have been done way, way before that. But
that's very true.
That's just my 2 cents, but nobody.
I feel like every 10 years this thing happens. It's kind of a reset, like when it happened in 2009 and now, during COVID. It's kind of a reset for everybody across the world, I believe, which kind of reminds us that, however far we may go, there are certain things which are basic and, you've got to stick to them in order to survive. It's like the survival instinct.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Mansi. So how is it tough to make someone laugh?
Extremely. That's the word.
I mean, it's easy to piss someone off and make someone cry, but making someone laugh is quite difficult, don't you think?
That is true. I feel like not just making someone laugh, understanding a person's emotion and just getting into what they believe in, because that's what's going to make them either cry or laugh or nudge them. So that's one thing I always feel like you got to understand the factor underneath the skin, what really ticks them.
Yeah. But then sometimes the jokes, or I should say the corny jokes, or whatever jokes you want to say, right? Whatever word you want to use, it seems like how far is too far when it comes to jokes?
So again, that's a very essential. I think that's in any sphere. Like where do you draw the line? It's essential to know that whatever you are speaking is not pushing the limit to a point where it's offensive, where it's really you've really gone beyond the boundary and it's no longer funny. It's actually offensive.
Yeah.
And again, back to basics. It's not really matching your principles. Like if you're telling someone to be dishonest or in your joke, or you're trying to put someone down and making fun of them and laughing at them, and to a point where it's really demeaning them, that's not something which is really appreciated. Like that's beyond a joke.
Yeah. Because, sometimes when you're in the stand-up, right? So let me step back a little. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference between a comedian versus a stand-up comedian?
I think there are different types of comedy. Mm-hmm. You can call it as like you have sketch, you have improv, you have stand-up, you have mimicry. There's so many different styles, and each one of them caters to a different kind of audience. Everyone has a different style of humor. Mm-hmm. So I'd say, yes, there is a difference. But again, some people, and it's very subjective. I've learned this thing that you would think that, oh, I don't think you're funny. Yeah, because maybe that's not your style.
Yeah.
That's not what really makes you, laugh, or that's not your kind of humor. Some people love mimicking and they love to hear mimicry, but some people are like, what is going on? I need to have some juice in it, some meat in it, and I want to have a takeaway from this joke, not just have a laugh and go. I think one of the comedian actually said this, and I really understand this. It's not just about how funny the joke was, but did I learn something out of it, or did I have a takeaway to, take back with me?
Thank you for that, by the way, Mansi. So, is it just me, or mimicry is not considered a joke or a comedy?
It's debatable.
It's debatable, right?
Yeah.
Because you know what? I can try to mimic you, but then that doesn't mean that's comedy. That's just making fun of you.
Right. Yeah.
So is that offensive, or is that just one of those friend things? So explain that, if you don't mind.
Yes, that's a very good question. I'll tell you why. There is, especially in America, whenever I've performed with American comics, it's always been, pretty much to the core stand-up or improv. Like, those are the two factors which are very much focused. However, and that's what I've seen in India, a lot of people get attracted to artists who are mimicking, or even if you see Kapil Sharma or the other shows where people are like mimicking and or trying to mimic an actor, and the audience finds it funny. So I think for any artist, audience is the key.
Yeah.
If it's making them feel entertained, good for them, and then even mimicking can be fine as long as it's not offensive. Again, coming back to the values, but end of the day, what works in that region, a lot of the times here when you mimic people, it'll just go dead.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Versus, yeah, you can act out. So there is a difference when you're acting out a joke. You're not mimicking, you're just trying to portray that scenario and narrate a story. Versus if you are mimicking someone and just laughing at them, and people are not able to relate. So it depends region to region. That's why I'm saying it's debatable, because there are people who mimic and they do well, and I've seen them do really well in Indian circuit versus American circuit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, by the way. But when you are, let's say there's a situation, and there's a situation, I think a year ago, a couple of years back, when someone was making fun of, let's say, Indians on the Bart Simpson show, and that was a whole fiasco like a couple of years back, right?
Yes.
So is that making fun of racial comments, or is that making fun of a character, or is that just a character in the play and that's it? What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, I understand when the makers had that accent, or had that character, it's fine to a certain limit. But I think after a point, when you stereotype or box a character in a certain, or a person or a region, or a person coming from a certain background, you just box them in a specific, you stereotype them. That's when it kills it, because there's more to just having a Simpson or like Apu. There's more to that accent.
That's
and
right.
Not everybody talks like that.
That's
so
right.
I think that's something which makes it harder for people like us. When you are going on stage, they are expecting you to be talking like that, or not having any knowledge about, like people ask me how you speak really well. Like, you almost feels like you're not from India, you're from America. But that's not the case, because not everybody, people in India speak so well.
That's right.
They're very fluent.
Yeah.
So what made you think like that? And it's kind of sad, because the picture that's been painted in front of them is because of characters like, in Simpson.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, because it seems like it kind of like irritated me on that part. So let me ask you a different question here. Now, let me ask you this. Now, stand-up comedian going on stage, aren't you afraid that you're going to bomb? Aren't you afraid that you're going to succeed? I mean, how do you go with that? Like, before the show starts, do you always say that, yes, I'm not going to fail, I'm just going to go up? What are your thoughts on that?
I always tell this to anybody who asks me this question. I feel like stand-up is like pretty much like cricket. You don't know when you're going to get out.
Okay.
So you don't know what you're going to score. It might be a century, it might be your day, or you might actually be out on zero and you're out of the field.
Yeah.
So that's like bombing, and it's pretty much like a game. It's not even just a form of art that you are performing, and it's going to function, it's going to work. And that's with any comic. Bombing is just part of the game. So you don't know how you're going to perform, and that's what makes a comic nervous. When in the beginning of the show, I go and interact with my audience, I talk to my friends or people who showed up and they've come to see me. I'll make sure that they're comfortable, they're doing well, but then they'll be like, oh, this is my friend, and she's gonna go on stage, and I'm like, oh my god, the bet's on me. And I don't know how I'm gonna do. So it just brings that pressure. But on the other hand, I also know that it's worth the pressure, because sometimes you perform better when you are under pressure. You know that you have to give your best.
Of course.
But it's like a game. It's less of like an acting or singing, because you know the lyrics, you know how you're going to perform, what you're going to perform, word to word, versus stand-up, you might have a heckler who's going to just ruin your show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Now, when you go on stage, is there a skit that you follow, or is there that you look at the audience and you start making it up as you go? How does that work for you?
So it's a mix and match of both. You do have a script. Every comic has one, so that they bring some content to the stage. They're just not coming empty-headed and just making stuff on the stage. Also, but you don't want to go just by the script. It's not like you're just narrating a story and just you're going, with the script, because you need to also understand what your audience is, where your audience is coming from, the background your audience has. Maybe your story is not even relatable. If you're creating a story which is related to, let's say, somewhere in West Bengal, and you're performing in Los Angeles, like how would your audience even relate to that? So it's essential to even engage the audience. And it's happened, like, let's say the comic prior to my performance has bombed.
Yeah.
The stage, like the entire room is dead. Now you have to lift it up. So the pressure's on you.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? You can't just start your story and like, oh, I am funny, my story is funny, listen to me. It doesn't work like that. You have to build that relation with your audience, let them connect with you, and then you can start your story.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The Los Angeles versus West Bengal, right? So let me give you an example. The same content cannot work in, let's say, Los Angeles and New York. Am I right? Because the culture is different, people are different, everything is different, right? So how do you know that? Do you research where you're going before you do that content? Because I think you practice all the content, right? So tell me about that. Does that mean that you go 30 countries or 30 states and you have 30 content?
You do have some similar baseline. So let's say I'm talking about dating in LA, and I'll have some sort of an analogy on dating in LA. That might be similar when it comes to all the metros. People will be able to relate when I'm talking to people in New York or people in Florida. Like, they'll be like, yeah, I get that. But suddenly I talk about people in Ohio and they're like, I don't know what she's talking about. It's not relatable to me anymore. Or even like I have a parking lot joke, a parking space joke. And, because we have certain designated parking spots, so it makes sense when you're doing it in America. But if you're doing the same thing in India, people will be like, I don't know what she's talking about. It's not
relatable, right?
It's not relatable. So obviously you have to research and see if this can be this joke is applicable, or is can have response from a different place.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So there was an interview that I actually saw a few years back about a comedian, or I should say an actor or a hero of Bollywood named by Govinda, right? And what he actually said was that, I don't know which movie it was. Let's say, hypothetically, hero number one, because I don't remember. Okay. He says that, I think one of my family member passed away. I did not want her to go. I needed to finish this shooting. Now, obviously, in his mind, it's going to be tough because there's a disaster in his family. How do you cope with that? Because you had a bad day at work, you argued with your mom or family member, someone died or something. How do you go on stage by putting that away and performing the way you should be performing?
Yeah, that's actually a true story. It's happened to me in my life when actually my father passed away, and I was doing the ceremony, all the rituals I had to do. I was there and somebody messaged me. I was in India and somebody messaged me from America saying that, hey, I want to book you for the show next month. And I was like, hey, I'm in India. I can't come because my father passed away. And she goes, that's fine. The show is next month. Like she said, I'm sorry and whatever, but the show is next month. It's not like this month.
Hmm.
I said, do you realize like what I'm going through? What are you talking about? But then I think over the period of time, I realized that as an artist, you kind of switch gears and you have to come in the persona that you hold for your audience.
Hmm.
And sometimes you got to just leave those situations away. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not a switch on and off, but you have to train yourself over and over again and say that, I got to stick to my guns and I got to do just this. It's like these minutes are very crucial for me and my audience. And then I can go and cry and sob and do whatever I want.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough, and I'm sorry about your father when that happened. It is definitely tough when it comes to these things, and when you're trying to make a joke, and then things happen. But sometimes I think you'll have to take a step back and go back to basics on that, and say, you know what, we're doing this for other people, and it's not always me. So yeah,
Right.
thank you so much for that.
I think also back to basics, one of the factor is commitment. If you've committed to a show, then you got to stick to it no matter what may happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like your job. If you've committed to some work, you've said that I will be performing, whether you do good or bad, that's, leave it to the audience. But you got to stick to it.
Yeah, so definitely, I hope things are well on your end, but thank you again for that. Mansi, now you have done so much in your life. It seems like you have a stand-up comedian, you have done modeling also. How about movies? Have you thought of being in the movies also, or TV shows even? Nowadays, I think there's a bigger plates out there, I should say, or buffet out there.
I actually have done a movie. I've done a short film. I've done actually 2-3 short films, and a few of them got featured in some of the film festivals. They were screened in Florida, in LA. They've been screened, and but I've not done a feature.
Okay.
Maybe because of the time constraint, because I've been doing so many, like juggling between so many things.
Sure.
But I think, and then the second thing was TV show. I did get an offer from Indian Matchmaking, the first season before it had come and become a thing, but I declined it. It was just too much personal information. I was like, okay, I gotta stay out of it.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, how far is how far when it comes to these things? Because it seems like you have done so much. So let me ask you this in a different way. Mansi, in the next 5 years, who are you? What are you going to be?
I don't know my next 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't. Like, pageant happened. I won 2 pageants, and both of them were, well, first one I almost thought I was asked to MC it, so I went and showed up, and they're like, oh, you're one of the models. And I was like, well, I wear sneakers. I don't wear heels.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So I ended up being a part of the pageant, and then I won the title. So obviously that was a lot of rehearsals, walking in heels to dancing in heels, and then winning the titles, then that 2 titles. So it just happened. And if somebody asked me 5 years ago that would you do, I'm like, are you kidding me? What a joke! Not possible.
Is it because you feel that you're done enough of that and no more, or what do you think on that?
As in?
As in modeling, as in acting, or you just love comedy and that's what it is? That's what you're gonna stick with?
No. I just feel like it's just like oyster. You got to like explore whatever. I don't like to box myself. So if you see, I'll never say, oh, I am Miss India USA. I'm never that person. Like, okay, what's next? What's next creative that we can do, or we can try, just so that you know that you've gotten that experience, because life's too short. Like, you can't box yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Mansi, for coming here. But before you leave, and before we tell the audience on Clubhouse to go and ask you questions after when we're done with this interview, what is your last words on Back to Basics here?
I think basics are like the essential to stick to anything, whether it's, I'm a techie, I also did pageant or stand-up. End of the day, it's like you have your perseverance, you have to have your confidence, you have to have your honesty, you have to, go through the Rona Dhona also. Like, there's so many things which, end of the day, hold you to the ground and lets you keep going. Even most of the time, 90% of the time, you're just gonna fall on your face.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And what do? Stick to your basics.
And if very quickly, very promptly, if I had to go and ask you to say some comedy lines, what would you say?
What would I say?
What would you say?
It's gonna people gonna get picked by that.
No, it's okay. Go for it. Go for it. I will say sorry on my behalf. Go ahead. Go for it.
Well, I usually say that. Let me think about this one. This is like I'm just thinking which one should I say this. I usually say it's very hard to date in LA, and especially the online dating kind of sucks because it's very terrible to find people online. Browsing the Shadi.com and eHarmony and Match.com is like browsing animal shelter. Yeah. Some have squinted eyes, broken hearts, broken bank balance. So just looking at these pictures, you just don't know who to rescue.
Okay.
They hate me for this.
No, it's
I get
okay.
rejections.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much, Mansi, for coming here and making my show brighter. And then we're gonna chat more also on Clubhouse. So thank you again, Mansi.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Girish.
Thank you. So before we shut down today, I just want to explain today's episode. Today's episode is we talked about comedy. We talked about the hardships of that and how to make people laugh. How do people cry at the same time, or I should say laugh and cry at the same time. So guys, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day on Back to Basics, and the quote of the day is going to be, if you haven't got any charity in your heart, you have the worst kind of heart trouble. That's by Bob Hope. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Guys, take care. God bless. And as I always say at my show, remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today. So guys, today, next week's episode on Back to Basics.
She's in charge of the squadron, and it was this very cool thing. But I think the inequality is when we get out of the military, is that women are not seen as veterans, and they're not recognized as veterans, and they're not treated the same way that, say, a male veteran would be treated.
Yeah. Is it really tough to bring women into the field versus behind the scenes, or the other way around? Does that make sense what I'm saying? So let me rephrase that a little.